everyone. I think we should have that first slide up if we could. I just wanted to welcome you to this review of our annual meeting. It was a really great meeting. We've got lots of speakers to get to. So as you see, we've got our immediate past president, John Dougan. Eric Emerson, the treasurer, will do his treasurer report. I will talk about nominations. Tim Baker will do awards committee and articles. Bylaws revision, which that was a really interesting session. Veronica Martzel will do the State of the State Records report. Ellen Ramsey will do SERI and Access grant reports. Michelle Gallinger will do SERI coordinator and access. And Lisa Johnson will be doing the alerting in the background to make sure everything works. So, John, would you like to start us off with the President's State of the Association report?
Be happy to. So, and this is really just a summary of what that I presented in Austin, but the beginning of my remarks really was about the fact that this is a member-led organization, and the board had such strong support, and the staff support that we've had, and the committee support with all of the SERI and other committees that we've had have really helped since I've been on the board to really to promote what the Council of State Archivists are doing. And so I just thank everyone that participated in the years that I've been on the board, particularly the year that I was president. I think we're doing very well with that. I think that the sustainability plan and the structure that we have now will lead us to the future and be able to enable us to have a little more sound financial basis for that. And the fact that we now have, as witnessed by some of the folks helping us with the webinar today, but the fact that we have a professional staff, full-time executive director, that really makes our organization more professional. It helps us to grow, and it helps those of us that are on the board to have those staff to rely on to help us to get through things. So, but anyway, I think we had a spectacular year, and I look forward to Jodie's year to continue to build on what has been done by Tim before me and all the presidents before Tim. Thank you, Jodie.
Thank you. All right. Eric, are you there? Looks like we need to move forward to the treasurer's report. Eric, are you muted?
Sorry. Sorry about that. Thank you, Jodie. I appreciate it. That's never a good sign. Okay, so up on the board there, you can see the financial balance sheet and the statement of activities for the year's end. Let's start with the balance sheet itself. We're in a really good position financially. If you look at the total current assets that we have, counting cash, accounts receivable, grants receivable, prepaid expenses, we're looking at $165,000 plus. And then total assets for the organization, roughly $338. And then down beneath that, if you look at our liabilities, that's laid out. And look down to the total equity line, and that gives you an idea of what our net worth is. That's what we're worth as an organization, which is liabilities minus equity. Want to draw your attention to the investments in particular there. So we've got almost double what we had in our investment account in 2015 over the past year. We've rebalanced that account, placed more money in securities than we had in cash previously in order to meet the goals set forth in the sustainability plan. So our investments are doing really well as we see it. And then look at the statement of activities for year's end. It gives you an idea of what we had budgeted for member contributions. And of course, that's the largest portion of what we get for revenue. And we've exceeded that amount since the board meeting. So we're over 132 for that, and we think we'll end up closer to 136. At the time of the board meeting, we thought that other contributions, which is basically sponsorships, that we were somewhat optimistic that we'd meet that figure, but I think now we believe we're going to fall below that figure, that $77,000. So either $5,000 or $10,000 below that figure. So that'll take some next year, some looking at the budget, trying to find a more reasonable figure for us to come up with, or a more sustainable figure to come up with that. So overall, the agency's doing, the organization's doing really well. Thank you, Jodie. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. Okay, so we're going to move on to the nominating committee report. First of all, I'd like to thank Sean Rounds and Adam Jensen of Minnesota and Hawaii, respectively, for working on the committee. You'll notice that we have 3-year terms and a 1-year term. The reason for that, in terms of the slate of candidates, is we actually had 4 people going off of the board, and we try to keep that at a 3 each year. So the 1-year term is a way for us, with Eric Emerson, to keep him on for 1 more year, to keep doing the great work that he's doing with the finance, and then that'll keep us next year to having 3 folks going off and 3 folks going on. So the nominating committee came up with a great slate, I believe, and you see that on your screen there. Dave Jones of Illinois, Rebecca Katz, District of Columbia, and Tom Ruler of New York, and of course Eric Emerson of South Carolina. At the meeting, those were voted on, and seeing no additional suggestions from the floor, they were all voted in. Then after the meeting, as is our practice, the board met with the new members and decided who their officers were going to be. And that last line tells you that was myself as the president, Tom Ruler as vice president, president-elect, and Eric Emerson as treasurer. So thank you for everyone who stood. Thank you to the outgoing folks, and thank you to everyone who stood for election. And I think we're going to have a really great year. And that's the end of my report. So Tim, would you like to do your part?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I'll just start out in saying this is, I've been involved in the awards committee in one way or another for a couple years. It seems like we keep on getting better and better awards. So thank you for having those nominations come in, and I encourage people to think about who they may nominate for our upcoming year. But this year, our CoSA Ancestry Leadership Award recipients were Catherine Giles from Kentucky Department of Library and Archives, and James Watson from the Maryland State Archives. Can I have the next slide? And our CoSA Walsh Leadership Award this year went to Ann Ackerson, our former executive director, well-deserved recognition there. The Walsh Emerging Leader Stipend went to Tyler Stump from the Pennsylvania State Archives. And our Rising Star Award went to Kate Telford of the Rhode Island State Archives. And so for the CoSA President's Award, if I may, I'll pass it to our illustrious past President John Dougan.
Thank you, Tim. So with the President Awards this year, we recognize one of our vendors. I think Barbara recognized that Ancestry has actually been a supporter of the Council of State Archivists now for 10 years. And so we recognize them for their support of the Council of State Archivists for 10 years. With Michelle, she has been leading the charge on the Access grant that we've had, and been very involved in a number of other elements of what CoSA does as well. And we thank Michelle, continue to thank Michelle for all that she continues to do for CoSA, particularly with the Access grant and working with our project partners for that we'll hear about in a few minutes from her. So we also wanted particularly to recognize Meg Phillips for much of what she's doing, where we're moving a little beyond just the NHPRC and our SHREBs, and actually working with the National Archives through Meg for cooperative events like the best practices exchange that we've had a couple of now, our quarterly webinars, and a number of things that Meg has been a great ally for what we're doing there. And then the last two CoSA President's Awards on this slide are really for the disaster recovery efforts that were with Susan Lugo in the Virgin Islands, and her stepping up first as a volunteer, and now I think she's working some with FEMA to continue the preservation and recovery efforts there. When I talked to Susan on the phone, she wasn't able to attend, but she said she really misses all of her friends in CoSA and seeing you every year at the conferences. But do know that she's in. She said that we're in her thoughts, and that she occasionally relies on some of us to support her in the things that she's trying to do there. We also recognize Jodie Foley, who I think maybe at the very beginning of my presidency had not actually been working with FEMA at the time, but was working to try and help with the recovery in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and other things since. But now she is the coordinator for the Heritage Emergency National Task Force, which I think kind of is in the Smithsonian, but works with FEMA for these disaster recovery efforts. And we recognized her for all of her work that she has done in the last few years with that. And hopefully she'll have a less involved year this coming hurricane season, or the current hurricane season, than she does now. So we also gave awards to our program committee representatives for the annual meeting that we had with SAA, and we really appreciate Roger and Kathy, and particularly Tanya Marshall, who was not able to be with us because she is recovering from breast cancer, and I think in good spirits from that. But anyone who's ever not participated in one of these national conferences just probably does not understand the amount of work that is required to be on a program committee for this. And all three of these folks did a phenomenal job representing CoSA and making, I think, the panel of presentations available to us when we attend so much better by their efforts. So thank you to all of them for what they did to make our conference better too. So, I guess I can take the first two of these on the next slide as well. So we also recognize Tim for his years of service, and David Carmichael was not able to be there with us. But David, for all that he's doing, he's in the middle of a building project in Pennsylvania that's taking a lot of his time. And Tim actually continued on as a full member of the board, not a past president, but also as a past president. But he chaired our bylaw committee and did a fabulous job, even though he was the past president. He pulled more than his share of the weight, and I appreciate that tremendously, Tim. So thank you to them for serving as well. Jodie also embarrassed me, and if she wants to do that again, she's welcome.
I can certainly do that. I'd just like to take a moment to congratulate and thank John for great work as president of CoSA over the last year. His dedication and knowledge of the profession is very obvious, and as a result, though he speaks softly, people listen. He has a calm, unflappable demeanor, which keeps the tenor of the meetings respectful, a sly sense of humor that likewise keeps things on an even keel, an ability to keep meetings on track, but also honoring all who wish to speak, an ability to find fresh or new perspectives that spur conversation and creativity. So thank you for a wonderful year, John.
Thank you as well. All the support that the board and the members.
Veronica.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I will be reporting on the biannual archives and records management state of the state report. Our time is short, so I'm just going to highlight a few findings. Oops. So much for my thought that I could move things.
You go to the next slide.
Yeah, sorry, Becky, it's not taking my space bar. there. The structure of the report is a little different than previous years. There's an introductory section, followed by sections on resources and administration, collection, access and engagement, special projects, and the section that I called Our Stories. Next slide. The introductory section highlights the historical context for the report, as well as takes a look at our response rate. Just for a little context, our response is broken down into 3 categories: joint archives and records management programs, standalone archives programs, and standalone records management programs. There's a maximum number of respondents of 68, and this year we received, for this report, a response rate of 54. Next slide. In the resources and administration section, we take a look at program placement as well as budgets and expenditures, including information about staffing levels and staff salaries, as well as different program jurisdictions and responsibilities. Those programs that have more broad responsibilities for local government or records outside of strictly just state agencies. Next slide. In the collection section, we're taking a look at changes in holdings, both physical and digital. These numbers also include record center holdings. And next slide. And then moving on, we have our access and engagement section. Here's a place where we're taking a deep dive into some of our reference statistics, as well as how we're communicating with patrons, not surprisingly, seeing an increase in electronic communications, as well as robust use of various social media platforms for engaging with the public. Next slide. The special project section is a place where we can do a little bit more closer analysis of some of the areas that are of special interest that maybe haven't completely integrated themselves into the day-to-day running of every state archive. So here we're looking at digital preservation programs, emergency preparedness, and the various state historical records advisory boards. There's a lot of data in there, and given time constraints, I'm not going to go into it, but this is definitely an area where we're working towards institutionalization, taking sort of from project to program for these areas, and seeing some mixed results as we're moving forward. Next slide. And then finally, the last section I called Our Stories. This was really an area where the various respondents were asked to share some highlights from their work, to engage, how they're engaging with the public, the wide variety of people that we are engaging with. It was really a section where I wanted to allow the respondents to speak for themselves and share those stories. So that is a section at the end where we've just taken your responses to those questions and put those out sort of whole cloth for the respondents, for people to take a look at. I've been in correspondence with Ann Ackerson. She sent the report to the designer today, so hopefully we will be having the full report, complete with over 100 pages of tables and all of the data from your responses, as well as comparisons to previous reports, available to you very soon. And with that, I would like to pass it along to Tim Baker to discuss the Articles of Incorporation and Bylaws.
Well, thank you, Veronica. So our original incorporation documents which established the legal basis for our organization, and our bylaws were first written back in the late 1980s. They really hadn't been updated in so many years. So I agreed to form a committee and take a look at this. And for the bylaws, the goals were really just generally to correct some minor typos, look at expanding the types of categories that can serve our organization. We needed to strengthen the statement of purpose for our organization and make some other updates, like updating the mode of communication to include email and eliminate fax machines and that sort of thing. For the articles of organization, one of the things we really wanted to do was to explore the possibility and usefulness of incorporating in another state. We had originally incorporated in Massachusetts, and sorry for my narrative is making the slides jump around, but the most important thing about our articles of organization was, in fact, we were originally incorporated as the Council of State Historical Records Coordinators, and legally we were bound in early 2000s to adopt a legal quote-unquote doing business as name for the Council of State Archivists. So there really were some compelling legal reasons for us to update these documents. The highlights of the changes to both the articles and the bylaws really made this name change possible and incorporated that, and it really just more clearly defined our current work. Other changes to our bylaws included noting that institutional membership allows for one vote per state, territory, and the District of Columbia, and further stipulates that all state, territorial, and DC archives are members regardless of their dues payment status, and further that the state archivists can designate members of their state archive staff as CoSA members and participants within that one vote per state rule. And the final thing that I'll just note is that we also attempted to remove gendered language throughout the document. So those were the changes that were contemplated and agreed to at our meeting. There is at least one outstanding issue that we weren't really able to thoroughly address because it had not yet been presented to the full membership, and that is that the document doesn't really make clear that the District of Columbia is a full member. It talks in places, it talks about the states and territories, and I think we really need to call attention to the fact that the District of Columbia is, in fact, a full member. And so I have agreed to stay on, and I think what we'll do, if the board agrees with this, I'll probably put out a notice for any other comments or suggestions for the bylaws, and then perhaps hold a CoSA on-demand discussion. And we know that one recommendation the committee will be putting forth to include the district, and we'll put forth any other suggested amendments for consideration at our meeting coming up next year. So that's my report. Thank you all very much, and I'll pass it over to Alan.
All right, thank you, Tim. I'm going to talk about the IMLS Access Grant project and about SERI. Could you go to the next slide? Cool. Sorry about that. So yes, the Electronic Records Initiative, and I just want to first start out by thanking all of the members of the three subcommittees and the steering committee and all the other participants, and including all of you for allowing staff and others to be involved. Without all the volunteers and all of the work that they do, we would not be where we're at, and especially to thank Michelle for keeping us all on track. And so first I just want to report a little bit about the various subcommittees are doing. So Advocacy and Outreach is working on a spotlight article regarding, which is coming out in September, on Nevada and governor's records. They're also ramping up for Electronic Records Day, coming up on 10/10, so pay attention to your mailboxes for announcements on those. And they've also been working on helping with the other committees, which I'll talk about in a minute, on a short video series for the upcoming year. Tools and resources continues to monitor and work with Carol Koosman, who's done a lot of work, and I thank her for all the work on the Resource Center and keeping track of what's in there, how can we improve it, reaching out to all of you for submissions. So remember, if you have anything, workflows, policies, other types of documentation or tools or anything like that, please submit them to the Resource Center. It doesn't work without all of us submitting materials. We've also been working, the Tools and Resources Committee has also been working with Michelle on documents for our stakeholders, some of which I will show you in a minute, so we've been working with some stakeholders, and this committee is sort of the first place that looks at the drafts of those documents to get them out, to get them up the chain and out. The Education and Programming Committee has been currently working on very close to finalizing the fall and beginning their work on the winter webinars. So stay tuned for announcements on that soon. It looks to be a really good slate coming up. They're also, as I mentioned earlier, working with the other two subcommittees to create a YouTube video series of short videos on various digital topics. And one will be out soon, or is out, but will be announced very, very shortly on BitRot. They've also recently updated their bibliography in the Resource Center, or working on that, and been working a lot on those things and getting those things in order. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Access Grant, which is funded by a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. We are just finishing year 2, entering year 3, which we got an extension for to do some more document work and to wrap things up. This grant is really looks at forming, as it says here, forming strategic partnerships with allied organizations, and getting material out to them, whether it's a one page or about how to do some sort of records-related topic or a larger playbook. So here, the project partners that we've been working most closely with are listed here: the National Governors Association, the National Association of State Chief Information Officers, otherwise known as NASCIO, National Association of Secretaries of State, and Chief Officers of State Library agencies. Working with NASCIO, which many of you have probably seen this, we put out a digital preservation playbook, so which has come full circle in a lot of places, and really alerts the CIOs to the issues around digital preservation. We also have been working, as I mentioned, with the National Governors Association, so we put out a few things on what to do when you transition in, transition out, and social media and public records. We've been working on a few other ones as well, and so that's helping to give updated information to the NGA. And then most recently, working with the National Association of Secretaries of State and the Chief Officers of State Library agencies, a short how to identify what's misinformation, what's real, what's fake, how to parse that out. And so providing a little graphic on that. So that I'm going to pass it off to Michelle.
And I'm going to unmute myself because I started talking when I was muted, so apologies for that, everyone. One of the things that we've been doing under the guise of the Access Grant that Alan was just telling you about was we have also been working with Preservica on an interagency transfer survey. The survey has been looking at how transfers of electronic state records are being done by agencies to archives. And we started this project with Preservica and developed a pre-survey, a survey which helped us focus on the issues of transfer through a survey of CoSA and the state archivists. And that was very helpful, identifying not just that there are some materials that are not getting to us in the proper fashion, but that one of the impediments to that is really transfer and transfer guidance and transfer capabilities. So once we had that information and knew that, we developed a survey that went out to both archives and agencies and to state CIOs. And that survey completed in May, and we went ahead and analyzed the data for that survey and determined a couple of things that were of real interest. One of which is that this won't be surprising to you at all, but the perspectives of the three audiences, the state agencies, the CIOs, and the archives, are not always in alignment. The questions that we asked them, for instance, does your agency have permanent records identified for transfer? The agencies mostly said no, or I don't know, whereas the archive said absolutely the agency has permanent records that should be identified for transfer to the archives. We asked, for instance, if transfers are planned and automated or if they're handled manually. And for the most part, we found that most transfers of electronic state records, when they happen, are manually transferred by agency staff on an ad hoc basis. They're not scheduled on a regular basis. We found that there's a disconnect in what people think they can use for file transfer protocols, whether that's FTP or FTPS or HTTP or anything else like that. We found that state CIOs' opinion was that there were permanent electronic records that should be scheduled for transfer in every kind of software or database management system. And we found that archivists really identified a strong subset of the kinds of software where they saw the most, where they saw permanent electronic records, and they did not assume that every kind of software had permanent electronic records. We found that archives are not routinely engaged during technology refresh and replacement cycles. Again, that might not be of a huge shock to you, but it was something that we felt like we could identify as a place for improvement and opportunity. Our next steps are we got some really nice guidance from state archives that finished the survey and submitted their written guidelines for interagency transfer. And we performed a crosswalk between all of those guidelines and are coming up with a one-page checklist for states who would like to update their transfer guidelines or to write them for the first time, and that'll be coming out shortly. In addition, we in Preservica are working on a report that will highlight the findings of this survey and identify some opportunities for action both in the short and longer term. And that's about it. Thank you so much for your attention and your time, and I'll pass this on to Jodie.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who has reported from the various committees and so forth. Looking ahead, what I'd like to really focus in on is what all those reports have shown. To me, it shows that CoSA is a fiscally stable and growing organization whose work to diversify is paying off. It's an organization with active committees under great leadership and whose output are consistently of great quality and of broad interest to the profession and our stakeholders. It's an organization whose grant and contract-based work, as just shown, is effective in meeting multiple needs of the partners, members, and the profession at large, and also of great quality. And we have a really talented staff that's coordinating all this great work and who are really able to respond nimbly to the needs of our members, the leadership in our committees, our partners, and our sponsors. I think what I see as well is that we have had some goals in the past year that have really been played out and laid out in our strategic plan. And we've been making really great strides towards fulfilling that document. But we have some more work to do, specifically looking at successfully completing the Access Grant. We're also going to be looking at gaining grant support to continue the great work that was done in that grant, and the continuing great work of SERI. We want to look at both continuing to work with our partner associations to share information about best practices and with our members collaboratively to improve electronic records management and digital preservation in all states and territories and DC. And also finding better ways to support our territorial archivists. CoSA will also continue to work on internal improvements, as we've already heard, in terms of the bylaws and articles of organization. And also looking to streamline support for our volunteers, examining our infrastructure. One way that we can really do that is by looking at the feasibility of implementing a content management system for the staff to really improve our communications. And also looking to continue our professional development opportunities, whether that's our great webinars, our conference sessions, everything that we work to do to teach each other and learn from each other. Also looking to expand the opportunities for professional development through service to the organization. I said this at the meeting, that I really believe that one of the best assets that we have is each other. And if we can continue to reach out and gather information from each other about whatever we're facing, but also looking at service to the organization through committees and the various projects. There's lots of opportunity for work, so please let us know if you are interested in a particular committee, and I'm sure we can find a spot for you. Finally, it's not too early to be thinking about next year's conference. We're going to be in Chicago at a joint meeting with SAA. So please contact our representative on the planning committee, Tom Ruler of New York, for more information or to share topics and ideas. Thank you again, everyone who spoke. And I guess at this point we're looking for questions. You can go ahead and put those in chat, and we can kind of direct those to whoever the best speaker is on that particular topic. Chirp, chirp. No questions? I think everybody did a really good job in terms of doing their reporting, but no questions at all? Okay, I think we can move on then to Lisa. Do you have a few more announcements to make?
Thank you, Jodie. And I know I appreciated hearing all the reports. As a staff member, you don't always get to attend all of the sessions because part of our job is running behind in the background, making sure things get done. So catching up on the activities was a great opportunity. So we still have a couple of member webinars this year. September is our SHRAB Town Hall, and the Education Committee met yesterday, and we think what we'd like to do for that SHRAB Town Hall, of course, share with Dan Stokes and have him give us updates. But we're going to ask some of our traveling archivist SHRAB members to give us some updates on, tell us, how does that program work? Because some of our other members might be considering that opportunity. So we're looking at that as the topic of the SHRAB part of the SHRAB Town Hall. Then, of course, in October, we will hear from our award recipients and have them share some information about their work and what's happening in their world. Of course, always you can register for the webinars on our website. And if you miss a webinar, you can go and watch the recording. As Alan said, the SERI webinars they're in the works, so do keep checking back at the website, and they'll see when the new listing is posted, so you can sign up for those as well. Of course, we would not be as functional as we are without all of our sponsors. So here's our shout out to all of our sponsors and funders: Ancestry, Family Search, Preservica, Apex Software, Space Saver, LibNova, Gaylord Archival, NHPRC, the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences, Crowley, and of course, our own staff as well. So we'd just like to remind everyone that there are lots of ways to stay connected, and you guys know most of them, but it never hurts to remind we have amazing ways to get in touch with other parts of our archivist family. So don't forget all of those. And as always, we do need your feedback on our webinars. Those feedbacks help us build our next sessions. They help tell us what you liked about this one and what you'd like to see in future webinars. So we hope you'll take a few minutes and complete your webinar evaluation. So with that, everyone, Jodie, unless you have anything else, we'd like to thank everyone for participating today in our member webinar. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing you at future webinars. Jodie, anything else you'd like to say?
I just want to thank everyone for attending and for presenting, and I want to let you know that it is an honor for me to serve as your president for the next year, and I look forward to working with everyone on the board and the committees, and thank you for this honor.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next month at the SHRAB Town Hall. Have a great day.